Okay, so my name is Benoit, CEO of Ravage, and happy to be here.
Ravage Automobile's take on the brilliant A110 has rapidly achieved cult status, yet the company and its backstory remain something of a mystery. In an exclusive behind-the-scenes visit, we join Ravage co-founder and CEO Benoit Tallec for a deep dive into the company's origins and how the cars are built, before testing a Ravage Group 4 A110 on some classic French N-roads.
My dad had a garage. He was a Ford dealer, so he had a workshop and a showroom at the same time. And as a kid, I just spent my life in the workshop and the showroom. So I had this like double experience. On one hand, like to see how a car is below the skin, and the rest of the experience, which is the commercial side, the marketing side, and so on. So I was fascinated immediately by this entire world. For many years, a car was just a machine for me. I realized that my attraction was also coming from the shape, the form, and more and more I understood that I will be someone working on the bodywork more than the engine. And when I was like 19 years old, 20 years old, my brother told me, you know what, you could combine those two passions into one thing called design and car design, which was extremely abstract for me. And I really like to sketch. So for me, it became super fun to combine those two skills, into one. When you are a car designer and a car engineer, and you start to see and imagine how the car will be in 5-7 years, right? They will become extremely complex, they will become heavy, they will be over-assisted. And our dream car was a lightweight car, super pure, still with the modern technology, still super sharp on the road, nothing vintage, but pure at the same time. We thought about the company, we thought about the brand, we thought about the long-term vision way before the Alpine. The combination of our strong wish and vision and the launch of Alpine A110 was really perfect. And they come with that brilliant car, brilliant design. And we are Ravage and we are touching that, So instead of like trying to prove the world that we could do something better, we observe the car. And if you step back, look at the car, look at the wheel, where they are, where do you have to extract air. You want the car as small as possible, right? So you want the rear super short, you want the ducktail here, you want this point there, and then you have to make a nice transition between all those elements, a kind of harmony.
A former head of design at McLaren and Mercedes, Tallec's CV is as impressive as they come. The discipline and precision of his design for the Group 4 A110 is a reflection of his OEM background, but its authenticity comes from a deep respect for the original design and a desire to amplify the looks to match the car's increased performance.
Some designers are more, obsessed by the sculpture, and sometimes they forget that there is also an engine below. So I like when it's beautiful in both ways. I like to see that air intake or the chassis is well integrated, or I like when it's a nice balance. When we imagine the next evolution of the Alpine, we had the dynamic in mind, of course, and we also had the design in mind. We love the 70s, the 80s, the golden age of Group B, Group 4, when you had to transform a factory car into monster and beast, So yeah, we had a lot of fun thinking about how you can transform this cute and polite Alpine in something slightly less shy. When you have a Ravage, the Ravage has wide track, right? And it's based on a lightweight and super compact car. That car had a lot of nice reviews in the past, right? So our job was to not damage that capacity. As you can see here, our design, despite it's wider, is extremely close to the chassis and the package. There is no wasted space, but with the Ravage chassis, the idea was to add stability and to give a different experience without changing the character of the Alpine.
Form and function is an overused term in the automotive world, but as Tallec explains, when it comes to the Ravage Group 4, those two essential qualities were always given equal priority.
This is the first chance we've had to see the finished car. When you set out to do it, your objective was to presumably keep it OEM clean, but to make as much impact as you can. So dimensionally, how much wider is the body?
The rear track is 80 mil wider, and the front track 40 mil.
Okay,
so you have this Renault 5 turbo effect.
Yeah.
You know, the rear has more track than the front. So I like the fact that it's not square, and
because the footprint is, you've got the 288 GTO Ferrari, haven't you? And it's uncannily.
Yes, the wheelbase is 2421, so which is 288 GTO, and with the white track, we are like at the millimeter close to the 288.
So was that just a happy coincidence, or was that something that you were aware of and you?
I would say, first of all, the wheelbase is is there because of the good job that Alpine did, right?
Yeah, with the packaging of the car.
Exactly. So the wheelbase is short, which is great for an agile car. And then when you add the wide track, then you have the magic number. You have a short wheelbase, wide track, like the 288 GTO.
Yeah.
So it's the difference between 308 and 308 GTO, yeah. The wheel position, the wheel dimensions and so on have been extremely well thought by Vincent. And as I told you, we worked with Michelin and OZ Racing to develop the perfect size, perfect offset, according to the weight, according to the torque.
And that was set, and that then drove that passed the baton to you, so you could clothe the mechanical package underneath.
So to be fully honest, I didn't ask Vincent to put the wheel here and there. He told me the wheels will be there, and then I did the design around. So it was not a design wish, it was a dynamic wish first. And then we did the design around. And then you happen to have less track here than there.
Is that an unusual way around, like in an OEM world? Well, I know it's not as specific as this
if you do a sports car, if you do a supercar, the chassis is really important, right? So if you do a hardcore sports car, I think the chassis guys have a strong world, right?
Kings.
Yeah, yes. We all believe we are the king, right? But if you do a mainstream mass production car, sometime maybe design could overrule the wheel position. And for example, when you go for massive wheels, you know it's not good for handling. I don't know if you know that, but massive wheels are terrible for dynamics.
So these are
18-inch. So we also had it would have been easy for us to go 19, for example, but we kept it as light and as small as possible.
I think it's so important with this. You know, we love this car. Anyone that owns them and drives them loves the car. It's so important to keep that, isn't it? And not just throw that away for the sake of 20% extra drama in the way it looks.
Yes. So design-wise, it looks like the OEM car, but it's not because of the white track. So of course we keep more or less the same design features.
Because this feature on the light still has to follow.
Exactly, you have to make sure it's as sharp, as controlled as the real car. But because it's much wider, you have to do all the curves new. So it's a very, I would say, humble approach. When you have to redesign the car entirely, making sure it still looks the same. And so we don't touch the light position. It's the same position, same construction, same cooling. but you have to accommodate more muscle. You see, you have much more muscle than before.
And then these areas here, you've just been able to draw the
the
body out slightly to
exactly. And some features on the car are there to reduce the drag for the CO2. But this is more performance oriented, so that's why we went for something close like the race car.
There's a nice story with the exhaust, isn't there, with DeVille? I think if you have any knowledge of, certainly as an English car enthusiast, that name is such a French tuning part, isn't it? And when we had the conversation about you using that name, I couldn't believe that there was no longer a DeVille as it
No, the brand
used to be.
doesn't exist anymore, which is really sad. So that brand is coming from the French Alps, which is also linked to Alpine, right? Yeah. And since the Ravage project, we were very lucky to meet Paul DeVille, so the creator of those exhausts. So Paul became a really good friend, and Paul helped us to develop that exhaust. So again, I'm not an exhaust expert, and I'm talking with Paul 4 or 5 years ago. I explained Paul the story. Yeah. And we put the first car prototype on the lift, and on the lift with a pen and paper, we designed that together with Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the real gift from Paul on top of it was to give us the possibility to use his brand.
That's the perfect endorsement, isn't it?
And he did that small logo is from him. So he did, instead of Échappement de Ville, Exhaust de Ville, it's written Ravage de Ville. That's not my proposal.
That was his.
That's coming directly from Paul.
Yeah. So you've heard from Benoit the story of Ravage and the backstory of this car, but this being Evo, the most important part of this story is how a Ravage Group 4 A110 drives. And I'm very pleased to say the whole car just has this uniformity of look and feel. Nothing jumps out, nothing screams, nothing tries too hard, but just as the exterior elevates the whole look of the car and gives it more purpose and a little bit more aggression and more presence, so the wide track suspension and the different dampers bring a different sense of purpose to the car. The steering has a bit more connection and a little bit more weight, so it feels more appropriate for a car that promises to sit on the road that much better and give you more grip. This is the second time I've driven some Ravage cars. The first time was purely for a magazine feature, and we were on the incredible roads, Col de Torini, very tight, twisty, classic Alpine mountain stage for the Monte Carlo Rally. These roads, close to 01, half an hour or so from Paris, country roads, very different in character, but the differences in the car are clear wherever you drive it. So I mentioned the steering feel and the steering weight. There's added stability, so standard series A110s felt very light and delicate, but they were quite playful. This car has that directness, but you feel more grip and you feel more stability through the high-speed corners. It's not as playful, but the way it interacts with the road and the way it cuts through these curves is really satisfying. You feel so connected to the car, and it just finds a really nice flow. The way you can tailor the damping and tailor the setup of the car. This particular customer wanted a car that was calm and easy to drive and maybe more of a GT in spirit. There's another car here today which has sharper steering and slightly firmer ride, and I think that's interesting that this car is so responsive to those fine adjustments. The bespoke nature of this car extends to every area of the car, really. There's latitude to tailor the car to your purpose and your taste. Benoit and his business partner Vincent. Vincent is the engineer. They both have deep OEM backgrounds, so the way they approach this car has that mindset. It's meticulous. It just gives the car such integrity of feel, and it's clever because they don't touch the areas of the car that don't need meddling with. So it just has this cohesion and polish, which is really hard to achieve and very rare in the aftermarket world. And this car sort of sits somewhere between the two, and that's, I think that's where the magic really sits. It just stays on the side of modesty because they want the car to be true dynamically. This isn't a style over substance exercise. Effecting this level of transformation on any car is clearly not a cheap exercise, and that's true with this car. But I think in a world of resto mods that seem to start at £500,000 and quickly get to £1 million, the fact that the base Group 4 Ravage, so the wide body, wheels, tyres and suspension fitted, is around about €105,000. That obviously starts marching on if you have the full repaint of the car. Can the A110 take it? I think it can. What I love about this car is, as a stock factory car, it's a beautiful, delicate sports car, but when you apply all these changes to the car, it becomes a real baby supercar in presence and personality, and the pleasure and excitement you get from driving it. The thought of someone coming in and messing with that recipe, it kind of set alarm bells off, but as soon as I've drove this car the first time around, you just know everything is going to be fine. It's done with such finesse and such knowledge, and as I've said before, such sympathy to the original car. It could so easily be the car Alpine made next. Obviously the great tragedy, as we all know, is that isn't going to be possible. They gave us the R, which was wonderful, and they went the whole hog with the whole team, and that is a very, very specialised, much more aggressive car. But I love this. Every time I drive one now, I fall in love with it. It makes me smile. It feels so good. It's such a shame that people don't build cars that are small and light, because even in this wide body spec, it's still such a perfect thing to thread down a good road. I think it deserves every success, and I think as Alpines settle and their values settle and there are more cars in the used market, I can see more and more people wanting to keep their cars because there will be nothing that comes to replace it. And yeah, it would be such a special thing to have in your garage and just to put a smile on your face.